Well, good Sunday morning, and thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. Well, at a recent United ISD board meeting, tensions and questions over a new recording policy put in place by the district. That policy resulting in warnings, profanities, and police escorts. It started when some members of the public questioned that policy in public comment, with some openly challenging it, and district officials drawing a hard line on what is allowed and what isn't. Take a look.
Plenty of people in the front crowd recording. We respectfully ask that you do go to the designated area and record if that's what you choose to do so. It's in accordance with the law. Any member that wants to record the meeting per the law needs to be in the designated area. It is, but you guys are out of order.
That's how a meeting with the new policy started, with a call to order. As you see, some members, community members, attempting to disregard the new recording policy by recording from their seats. Well, that wouldn't have been an issue before, but in a letter dated September 12th, Superintendent Gerardo Cruz explained that a designated area for recording was necessary to prevent any disruptions and necessary to maintain order. That was before, of course, public comments opposed the district's move, citing a category of concerns.
Of free speech, freedom of press to record, videotape, and photograph. Yet you want to implement a rule that prohibits us from recording. How can we protect ourselves from false allegations? If you pass this rule, you will be preventing taxpayers from documenting the facts as they happened here.
Most importantly, as an American, it was disgraceful what I just saw happen to our people that were in the audience, especially this young lady. She's not with media. She was here just to record. This is a public forum. We have a right to record here if we want to.
In an effort to justify the policy, the district referred to Texas Government Code Section 5-51.023, explaining that it allows a governmental body to implement reasonable rules for maintaining order, including regulating the location of recording devices and the manner of recording. Now, in a statement sent to KGNS, the district says, in part, the use of a designated area where attendees may lawfully record is meant to increase the efficiency, order, and safety of board meetings. However, it remains unclear what prompted the district's decision to put this rule in place. However, one UISD board member had a different take on the decision, acknowledging there might have been a better approach to rolling out the policy and putting some distance between him and the new move.
Some of those things, I believe, were done at the level of the superintendent's office. And so, particularly in my situation, I was not advised that we were going to have certain policies during school board meetings. And so those policies, I think we should have considered them a little bit more thorough.
Well, that's where we begin this week's discussion. Making up our panel, we have Sergio Mora. He is the KGNS political contributor, and Luis Villarreal, KGNS general manager. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mindy.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah, so...
It's been a while. Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Wow, I mean, I very rarely find myself at a loss for words, and it's not because of amazement or disagreeing. It's just that I can understand. Listen, nobody's preventing you from recording, right? Yeah. You can go in and record this public meeting. Mm-hmm. They just wanted you to do it from one particular area.
Correct.
Right.
Why was that necessary? And we haven't been told what prompted this. We've been asking, and we've been trying to figure out what prompted this. And all I can think of is that somebody was recording unflattering angles of people.
Yes, you got it.
Or maybe somebody picking their nose while somebody else is speaking. And part of me says, you know what? I don't have a problem with that, because there's a difference between, yes, it's a public meeting and you have the right as a citizen to go in there and record or do whatever you want, take pictures, but I don't think you have a right to be making fun of people or using that video inappropriately. And if the area where you're filming, and again, I'm not sure where I am on this thing. I just find it very interesting that we're having to discuss this without knowing what prompted it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that from what I've heard, I think that you hit the nail on the head in that they would zoom in on board members getting their reactions to certain things or to certain
And then use them
comments.
on memes. And
Well, I think that there's a group, Parents United, which is the big activist group that's comprised of parents and community members. They have been doing actually a really good job of just covering what goes on at UISD, absolutely everything with the board, expenses, everything. Obviously a very niche sort of coverage, but effective, and I think that they have been very instrumental in the positive changes that we have seen at the school board recently. But it's reached a boil in that it's become confrontational, you know? And there's been instances where they show up not only at the board meetings, but at like campuses and UISD security offices looking for people, like sort of like to catch a predator style, like, hey, we need to talk to this guy, like already recording, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. I agree with the work that they're doing, but you also have to remember that there is a live stream of the UISD board meetings on YouTube.
It's readily available.
Yeah,
Right,
so I'm torn on this, but at the same time, if you do look at it like it's just the latest sort of strike back from the board against these community activists, well then it is worrisome in that has become an issue in that the board against the activists.
Yeah.
But obviously the availability of recording devices and how easy it is nowadays to record anything from anywhere at any given time. What do you call it? You can hide what you're doing easier, I mean, it's not like you're having a big camera, and everybody knows you're recording. You can have, cameras that are
the glasses camera.
All these
all over
things.
the
And,
place.
I mean, how many times have we here where we're surrounded by cameras, we go, oh, are we being recorded? It's like, well, you never know, right?
Yeah,
So it is a very... I don't know where I stand. I think there are good points on both sides. I certainly do not agree with anything that would jeopardize our ability to keep government entities in check and our ability to act as citizens and that our rights not be trampled upon. But there's also supposed to be an order of way, and unless you're being denied access, which I don't think anybody here is being denied access.
Yeah, not at all.
Go to a courtroom and try to record something and see what happens.
Yeah, and you are not allowed to.
Right.
You are not allowed to. You can't
we
take
don't question
in phones.
it, right? I mean, and you can't even take your phone in.
Yeah,
I mean, so
we can't take cameras in the courtrooms or anything. What I wanted to mention was that every single comment of the folks that we just saw in the little clippings that we just aired right now, all of them were accusing the board members of denying their rights and the freedom of speech to record and things like that. That's not what this was. I mean, we've been talking about that right now. This is just, you can record all you want. Yeah. You just need to do it in a designated area. So they're not denying anyone's freedom of speech, freedom of press, anything like that. The other thing I just wanted to note, and this is just on a personal basis, is that I've had my kids doing things there at the side.
United,
no, not at all. But one of my sons was in the orchestra when he was in high school, and we would go many times to that auditorium to listen to performances. And there were always people who set up their phones on the phone tripod right in the front, and they would hinder our view. And we would have to very politely say, can you move that to the side because I can't see. On that note, we would grab our phones and we would record our son playing right there from where we were, but we were trying to be not very, we weren't trying to be rude and obstruct anyone else's view. So the lady who was sitting in the chair and was recording from there, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
But when you are setting up your phone on a tripod and you're right there in the front and you are blocking someone's view, that I do see a problem with. And I do think that they should go to a designated area.
Yeah, you're talking now about etiquette and about respecting people's spaces and all that stuff. But again, we go back to the fact that we don't know what prompted this. Is it as simple as people complaining that
your view's being obstructed?
I can't see because somebody else has a big Galaxy
like
5 and you can't see.
I think also that these groups that operate on social media are effective because they dramatize, they get good camera angles and
you can sway somebody's opinion based on somebody's face or reaction.
You can get people to pay attention to something that they normally don't pay any attention to, and I think that is bad news for the community if nobody's paying attention to what they do, which is important considering what they have done in the past.
And I agree. And so there's a delicate balance because, then you start dealing with how easy it is in the advent of all our new technology and AI and all that to fake stuff and to even put voices or put things into, okay, so, all of these things, and I'm not saying that that's a reason to do this, it's just, we have to be very careful about what we watch and what we see on social media because we have been exposed now even worse than ever because it used to be okay. So now there's so much altered content
that's another
out
story,
there. Well, but so you're a board member and you are doing your job and somebody's taping you from an angle and they use that later because they're zooming in or whatever. To
take something out of context.
To take something out of context, to take a reaction. Again, I don't know that is the reason. All I know is that there is a balance between the public's right to know and the governmental entities and these people who are ultimately public servants to protect themselves. So.
I did want to ask before we go to break, what did y'all think of the board member who all of a sudden backpedaled and said, I had nothing to do with that? He kind of threw Dr. Cruz under the bus there.
At this point, I expect that. It's election season.
That's right.
Yeah, and he's trying to...
People change during election season.
People change during election season, no kidding.
And try
it's a different conversation.
Try to backpedal. Okie doke. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our neighbors to the south have a new president. Will she follow in the footsteps of her predecessor, or will she chart her own path? And what does that mean for Laredo and our sister cities? That conversation when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Well, Claudia Sheinbaum took the oath of office last week as Mexico's first female president in more than 200 years of independence. She has promised to protect and expand its social safety net and fight for the poor like her predecessor, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. She, nonetheless, is facing pressing issues. The 62-year-old scientist turned politician receives a country with a number of immediate problems, including a sluggish economy and rising debt. She has pledged to continue all the former president's policies, even those that strengthened the power of the military and weakened the country's checks and balances system. Congressman Henry Quaid weighed in on what needs to be done in Mexico under the new administration.
And if we want to see more foreign investment in Mexico, with all due respect, Mexico, the new president, the new administration has to do a better job at going after the cartels. Because when you talk about businesses, except for the big multi-companies, other businesses are afraid to go there because they don't want to get quotas, they don't want to get extorted by the bad guys. So that's one of the biggest challenges that she has.
So with that in mind, it seems it may be 6 more years of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. What do you guys think?
Well, that is actually the biggest question on everybody's mind is Mexico has a proud tradition of no matter who was the president before. The new president is completely independent of the previous president. We saw it during the 70 years of the PRI, where the previous president actually many times left the country. And this is more of a, like, is there a power behind the scenes like a lot of other countries have, you know? So that's a big question, is that will AMLO be pulling the strings?
Well, I mean, it was actually said, you know, where she is pledging to continue. It's no secret that he was her mentor and she looked up to him. And so would she do anything different, you know?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think that just the fact during her tenure as Mexico City mayor, she brought to bear, which is, I think, her brand as a scientist, in that everything was data driven, and she hired people that weren't political loyalists or party hacks, but she hired what are called technocrats, people with high levels of education that rely on data and science to guide the actions that they take. And there was a recent Wall Street Journal report where she actually was cited as cooperating heavily with the Department of Homeland Security and American intelligence and law enforcement agencies to dramatically bring the crime rate down in Mexico City. And that is a very stark contrast to Manuel López Obrador, Andrés Manuel, who had the policy of abrazos no balazos, and who would really hamper nationwide cooperation with agencies such as the DA, based on politics, based on striking back on stuff he didn't agree with. So that's a great sign. The fact that, like at the end of AMLO's term, there was that big judiciary reform. A lot of people are calling it a step back in terms of democracy, because now if the judges are elected, that means that they will fall under the Morena umbrella, which is a very strong political party that AMLO built literally from the ground up, and now controls the majority of governorships, both houses, all of the legislatures, et cetera. It's a powerhouse. It's insane what he accomplished. But I have high hopes. I just because of her background and her tenure as Mexico City mayor, hopefully we'll see good progress.
You know what strikes me, Sergio, and is how little attention, not just now, but even during AMLO's term, how little attention the national media in the United States is paying to what's happening in Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, because depending on who you talk to and where you hear things and you know, the direction where they're coming, this trend and going way past the left, I mean, it's so far left that it's bordering on the right on the other side.
Yeah.
It is scary for us as a nation. We're our #1 trading partner, and you know, we share I don't know how many kilometers or miles of border and all this stuff. And here we are sitting right next to a country who, again, not to over dramatize it, but you know, could be the next Venezuela in a few years. And whether or not that is true, it's just how little attention is being paid to it. That's what.
Well, and that has been brought up a lot. These anti-democratic measures, like the judicial reform, the empowerment of the military in all aspects of life, that's been brought up a lot. In that, why hasn't the United States been more influential
or at least more vocal about it?
Yeah, and the answer is that this administration, and certainly the one before, have really relied on AMLO to control the flow of immigrants, especially in Mexico's southern border.
Right.
In that, and AMLO also being a very transactional, obviously very smart guy, says the U.S. tells the U.S. like, hey man, if you give me grief about anything I do, I'm not gonna stop the migrants anymore. They're gonna flood into your country and you deal with it. And both administrations have been like, no, please, we need your help on this because it's such an important issue in the United States. So yeah, that's to answer your question. But also this has been in a trend not only in Mexico, but in India and in Europe and a lot of places where a lot of governments are becoming autocratic in that they have been dismantling the institutions that guarantee free and fair elections, free and fair and independent judiciary, et cetera, going more towards the strongman kind of model that is no stranger certainly to Latin America. It's no stranger certainly to Mexico. And Mexico was lauded a lot when the PRI itself under Cedillo created the INE, the Institutional National Elections Administration, which was applauded the world over as bringing democracy to Mexico. It was so independent and so competent that Mexico had taken some huge strides forward in that regard, and that has been one of AMLO's prime targets.
Not to mention, you talk about, and I have to smile or even laugh at the protecting of the poor, because it's such a slogan from these people that, and all the money, all the projects that AMLO lauded as, doing and creating that were left unfinished. A lot of people, my hope, I don't know anything about this president, but my hope is that she is able to distance herself from him and maybe bring something to the community and to the country that hey, your beliefs being what they are, I don't care, but I think she is a more centric figure than AMLO is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I don't know. We'll have to see what the influence is.
The first woman president in 200 years of independence for Mexico, all eyes are going to be on her. She's going to be under a microscope. But on top of that, there's going to be so many young girls and women and children and that are just going to look up to her. So I just hope that she realizes that she can truly be an icon for so many young girls, especially those in Mexico. And I hope she knows the strength that she has, and I hope she does good. I hope she does well.
I agree. And I mean, you have to take into consideration also that well, this is populism also. Like, the reason that you're in the state you're in is because of the elites, and they've been taking advantage of you, et cetera. Los fifis, AMLO's favorite word. And populism is a very potent tool across the world. There's obviously candidates here in the U.S. that strike the same tone. But it's a tremendous opportunity for Mexico.
Absolutely.
For progress.
Okie doke, guys. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. We start with Sergio and Sergio's one thing for this Sunday morning.
I have a book of the month book selection. And the crazy thing about it is this is the third book I read about the same exact subject, and it's about Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. This one I think is by far the best I've read. It's called Character Limit, and I love how they get creative with the titles, because Character Limit is the 140 characters for Twitter. And it just goes through it. The story is so surreal that it reads like fiction, but it's actually real life, and how the richest man in the world loves tweeting and said, I'm going to buy Twitter for $40 billion just because I can, and I'm going to fix it. And unlike flying rockets into space and building electric cars, he's had a lot of trouble with this.
Yeah.
And they just
what was supposed to be the smallest little investment turned out to be his worst nightmare.
Worst nightmare. Yeah. So they talk about him firing everybody, walking into Twitter with literally a kitchen sink, saying, let that sink in. And just a lot of like his personal ego and personality, and the culture is so in contrast with the culture at Twitter, and how they clashed. And then I'll be quiet now. I'm sorry.
Okay, go read the book. Luis.
All right, mine's very quickly. I had a conversation with a dear friend of mine over the week or last week. I don't remember exactly when, but we were talking about the subject was very simple. It was like, what was the best show? We were talking about Breaking Bad. It's like, was that the best show ever? And so that got us into a discussion about the best shows ever. And why do we have to do that? Why do we have to find out what your thoughts on the best ever at anything is? Why is everything a competition about what's best?
Like, that was my favorite book on that.
What is it?
And when you say that, if you don't agree with that one being the best ever, then the second one is just not the best ever, and so that's got to be the worst. I don't know. It's just
Too much competition.
Competitive.
Yeah, we live in a world of competition.
Yeah.
This is the best show ever.
That
is true.
That is true. Well, my one thing has to do with my latest episode of Morning Brew. We were talking about voting, how important it is to vote, but back on September the 17th was National Voter Registration Day, and we were so thrilled to see the numbers. 2 million more people in the United States registered to vote on that day. But did want to mention that tomorrow, this Beyond the Headlines is airing, of course, on Sunday. Tomorrow, Monday, October the 7th, is the very last day that you can register to vote if you do plan, and we hope you do, plan on voting for November the 5th general election. So go out and register to vote if you have not.
If you don't vote, you don't complain.
Because this is the most important election ever.
Ever. Ever. That's right.
They're all important.
That's all the time we have. We'll see you right back here next Sunday for the next episode of Beyond the Headlines.